Are you ready for rapid fire?
Is it time? Are we
Let's
there?
do it. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
No time like the present.
No, I love it.
We've got so much juiciness in rapid fire
You're not wrong.
today. So let's start with another Marcus Freeman soundbite. He was asked at the end of his press conference Saturday about the possibility that Drew Pyne, could he return to the team if Pyne changes his mind about transferring? And here is what Marcus Freeman said.
I don't know. I don't.
I just know sometimes that happens. They do, they get out there and they have regrets and guys come back.
If that decision comes, we'll look at that situation. If that comes up in the future, we'll look at each situation independently. But if that happens, we'll look at it and see is this what's best for our program and for that individual. We'll look at it on an individual basis.
So what do you think, Vince?
I'm trying to be professional.
I know.
But sometimes, I mean, it's like they always told the kids in school there's no such thing as a bad question. Sorry, that's not true. And I've told my students that is not true. And it's not true in the media either. Okay. I will give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit for the way he answered that question, because you could see the look on his face that he wanted to be like, what are you talking about? Why are we even having this conversation right now?
Look, Marcus Freeman doesn't tap dance much.
No.
And he doesn't word salad very often.
Agreed.
But what he did there, and again, like looking at his face when he was answering that, and just like you could see his eyes kind of started moving back and forth a lot more than they usually move back and forth. It's like, how am I going to answer this diplomatically? That's what he was trying to do. Answer it as diplomatically as possible. Because again, even though the kid's not the program anymore, he's still not going to throw the guy under the bus, which he very easily could have done in that situation.
Correct. And I'm sorry if I'm the head coach and Drew Pyne told me he wanted to transfer, which, by the way, I fully anticipated would be the case after the bowl game. I did. I thought that he was probably going to put his name in the portal. Okay. So it's the timing of it. We've talked about that 100 times. But if a kid tells me he's going to transfer, good luck. Thanks for all you've given us. Good luck in the future. This is a one-way street. I'm sorry.
Now remember, he could have brought up Houston Griffith. Remember, when Freeman came in, Houston was going to transfer.
That's true.
And Freeman, I believe, played a big part in talking him into staying.
Huge part. I remember that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that does, back up what was being asked there. Sometimes guys do change their mind. I just think that in this specific situation, knowing what we know that we're not going to fully elaborate on, but knowing what we know, the way this was handled, that bridge has been burnt. That's never, never coming back. He's never coming back.
No. And I mean, you can look at it a lot of different ways. Like his
announcement. Kovic might have a better chance of walking back in the door right now than Drew Pyne.
Seriously. You saw these guys, declaring for the draft and talking about transferring, right? And they were all on the nice Notre Dame, background with the pictures, and it was a processed media snapshot, right? And if I'm not mistaken, Drew Pyne's was written in his iPhone notes, screenshotted, and tweeted out. You know what I mean? That is the definition of a rash decision, number one. And number two, again, like you said, that bridge has been burnt. There's no coming back to a burnt bridge at that point. And so while I think Drew is making the right decision, all in all, I do think that just the timing is terrible. And I think he kind of ticked off a lot of people. Now, that's me. That's what I think happened. I haven't gotten any word on that, but it just, he's not.
Wouldn't this be something as Gavin? What if he ended up going to Boston College? They need a quarterback right now.
They do. They absolutely do. That would be great. You know what? That wouldn't be a terrible spot for him.
Find out
if
how
I'm being
spoiled he
honest.
was with the offensive line that he had at Notre Dame.
I was gonna say that's the only reason it's not a good place for him, because he would die. He would die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Phil Jakovic was at least, physical stature a little bit more. But I think it was Brooks and Dunn. We'll burn that bridge when we get there. And that bridge has already been burnt. They already got there and they kept on moving. So fill in the blank. Marcus Freeman said Saturday there will be no more opt-outs or transfers for Notre Dame before the Gator Bowl. That means left guard Jarrett Patterson, who is out of remaining eligibility after this season, will play in the bowl game, and that is blank.
Awesome. It's friggin' awesome. I love that. I come at this from a very old school sentimentality about finishing the season, finishing what you started. I had one of my kids today, my actual children, tell me, well, if I sign up and I don't like it, I could just stop going. Like, no. My exact words to him were, you're a D'Addario. You sign up for something, you finish it. Okay. Right. And that's how I've always felt about everything, Now, do I blame, Michael Mayer?
You might not have to play or do it next year, but you've got to do it this year.
You at least have to finish what you signed up for.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're not going to quit in the middle, And again, I don't blame Mayer and Foskey. I don't in any way. But I'm still super excited about the fact that Jarrett Patterson is sticking around. And I that's what I would tell my kid to do. Dude, finish what you started with your team, right? If you get hurt, then that's God's plan for you, right? Go out and play the game.
Jarrett Patterson has had a bad foot all season. He obviously missed a game. And guy's been walking around in a walking boot on campus like during the week to protect that foot. And, it's like he gimps around and, and it's cold out there, obviously.
Yeah.
Right now you can slip on anything, but it's like this guy, despite what the opinion I think people form because he got ticked off at the end of the Marshall game, I'd rather see him ticked off than not ticked off. I mean, you want to see him stay on the field with his team, but still, I'd rather see him ticked off than not ticked off about that result. But so through everything, he's played hurt all year long, and he is an NFL caliber offensive lineman. He's going to be drafted at some point, probably a day 3 guy someplace, but he's going to be drafted. He's going to be on an NFL roster next year. And the fact that he's playing is huge, I think. Now, again, there were some other guys who potentially, who had a little bit of experience they could have plugged in there. But I think the fact that he's back, again, when you look at, like you talk about culture and foundation and all these different things that you're trying to do going forward, I think that it's nothing but good for your program to have a guy like him, having gone through what he went through this year and is apparently still going through, to go out there and say, I'm not going to opt out. I'm going to play in the bowl game. I'm going to stick it out to the end.
Yep, absolutely. Like I said, every situation is unique, obviously. I just come from a different school of thought. I would want to finish the season that I started with my teammates.
And Crystal, I completely agree. She says,
I get it.
I agree, unless millions are on the line and you were playing in the Gator Bowl at that point, you make a business. I have no problem. And that's what Michael Mayer and Isaiah Foskey did. But the difference between them, especially Michael Mayer and where Jarrett Patterson is likely to get drafted, like Patterson could be a 3rd round guy still. There's a lot of draft process to go through, but still I think the end of the 1st round is like $9 million or something like that. Whereas once you get to the 3rd round, there's not nearly as much on the line, so you're talking about a difference in millions.
I totally get it. I mean, if my son's guaranteed to be a 1st round draft pick, that's a conversation we're absolutely having.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Right.
It, like I said, it's hard for me. And, 5 years ago, this wasn't even a thing. You know what I mean? 5, 6, 7 years ago, this wasn't even a thing of opting out, really.
I don't think it necessarily started with Jalen Smith. I think there were some LSU players, it seemed like, who were kind of like the more high profile guy, but obviously, like the Jalen Smith thing, even though he says if he had to do all over again, he would still play. I mean, that's a guy who literally could have been the number 1 overall pick, but he gets fortunate that Jerry Jones threw him a life preserver and even drafted him in the 2nd round, and then turned that into a big contract a couple of years later, even though his play rapidly declined after that. But that's a guy who, like prime example right there of a guy who, because of that injury, millions and millions of guaranteed dollars were lost.
Yeah.
There was no guarantee he was going to get that second contract. He's very fortunate that he did. But for anybody, like that's you talk about life-changing money. It's like
Absolutely.
generations for your family of
Yeah.
money
Yep.
that's on the line.
Yep. No doubt about that.
Vince, which is the bigger whiff? Notre Dame football not adding a transfer quarterback last offseason, or Notre Dame men's basketball not adding a transfer big man this past offseason?
I realize the people in this chat are probably going to disagree with me, but I'm going to go with the basketball team. And here's my reasoning. With the football team, they had all their eggs in the Tyler Buchner basket, and I get it, right? From all accounts, he could be a really good player. He could be, right? Yeah. And he was there on your roster. They didn't have anybody on the roster for the basketball team that got hurt. You know what I mean? They didn't have that guy. That guy does not exist. And if anybody's going to say Matt Zona, that's probably not. I mean, Matt Zona looks like he could be on the United States curling team. Okay? If that gives you an idea of what Matt Zona looks like. He got in the game at the end of the Marquette game. I was like, ooh, Matt Zona. Whew, dad bod. So It was a situation of they didn't even have a big man on the roster. So they're getting beat up on the inside, and Marquette was a beautiful example of that. And I'm not even talking about like a big, thick big man. Like they just had a big, long big man, and he ate up the Irish on the inside, and they had no answer for that. None. So
and it wasn't just one.
Team.
They gave up 50 points in the paint yesterday.
Yeah.
50 points in the paint to Marquette. 63% of the points Marquette scored were in the paint yesterday.
They
and like
rebound.
You go back to the Syracuse game. 34 of the 62 points Syracuse scored were in the paint. That is, and those are the two better teams that they've played so far. I don't care about St. Bonaventure. I'm talking about big conference teams. There's still a lot of good basketball teams that they've got to play this season. And especially as Mike Bray leans on the experience and being old and all this stuff. Now, obviously, I have no idea what was out there on
right. I don't either.
In the portal and all, what was available, but you've got to bring in some kind of viable body, even if it's just just to play a little defense, just to occupy a little space in that paint, because they are getting killed right now because all they've had is Leszewski, who obviously, is more that stretch four kind of guy, and then Venel and Lubin, and neither one of them, nobody is giving them any presence in the paint right now.
Venel Lubin is not a paint guy. He's not a paint guy.
But he's their biggest body other than Leszewski.
And frankly, Leszewski's not a paint guy either. He's a top of the key guy, and he's a corner three guy. Like that's who Nate Leszewski is. Yeah, absolutely. And they're basically starting four guards and a forward. I mean, that's basically what they're starting. And look out for that team that's got a couple of bigs, because Notre Dame's not going to have an answer, and they didn't have an answer yesterday. And that game was over early. Notre Dame got into foul trouble early because they were trying to be physical down low, and they were just getting – I mean, I can't find it right now. I was kind of looking for it. Like the and one situations for Marquette were off the charts because they were just manhandling Notre Dame in the paint. It was, like I said, Notre Dame got into foul trouble. I thought the fouls were a little bit ticky-tack, and they were calling a lot of them on Notre Dame. It was like 9-2 at one point or something along those lines, and I think that just got them out of their rhythm, and they could just never really get back to their offensive rhythm. And then on the defensive side, there was nothing they could do.
Yeah, they're calling those hand checks this year. It's I think it's ugly when they start calling that, because you take everybody out of their flow, but that's the way they're calling it. You got to do it. But, as to the, the quarterback thing, we've talked about this before. They would have brought in a quarterback if it was a quarterback who was willing to compete for the job of Tyler Buchner.
Good call.
Who didn't want to be anointed. So, I still stand by. I think they made the right decision for this team because, as you said, they had Tyler Buchner. They thought Buchner was the guy. They could have brought in a transfer. The guy, JT Daniels, the guy they talked to, didn't want to compete. He wanted to have the job, and now he's moving on to his 4th school.
Which
So
is nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts that you can do that. Nuts.
Yep. Stymie says he likes Bray. Does change with the times. He's playing 2 freshmen. That never would have happened before. They tried, but they couldn't land a transfer. It's, again, I don't know exactly what was available in the transfer portal, but there were a lot of transfer portal. There's like, it's like the average is like 3 players per team go in the portal every offseason across basketball on the men's and women's side. There had to be someone you could, a warm body, again, you could bring in just to play, just to have some kind of defensive presence in there. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really say that Mike Bray has changed with the times. I mean, he's always been a 4 guard, one big-ish guy, offensive guy. He's always had a short bench. Yes, he's playing freshman.
I honestly think he's been ahead of the times because his 3-point approach. Yeah, like his team was 3-point reliant before the rest of the world, and Steph Curry made it popular, to be 3-point reliant before analytics took over. That's what his teams were. They were always very 3-point reliant, live and die by it, and all that kind of thing. But it's just I think the recruiting cycles have caught up with him these last couple of years because you've got to have somebody's got to be ready to go in terms of a post type player where they are right now. And they don't have that right now.
No, they don't. Nope.
And, the other part of that as well is when you look at this team, big picture is you've got all these 50-year guys. What if they had decided not to come back? What would this roster even look like? One, they've been together for 5 years now, and that's how they're playing most of the time. But 2, what would, you would have had to go out and take like 5 MAC kids to come fill out the roster if those guys hadn't come back.
Well, it's going to be rough next year because those guys are out of eligibility, And
that's what I'm thinking about next year. What's going to happen then?
It's going to be rough. You're going to have a lot of new faces because clearly he does not believe in those guys that have been sitting on the bench for the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So because he's recruiting over them, right? He obviously doesn't believe in them because he's recruiting over them.
Yeah.
So, why would those guys stick around? Get your degree and get the heck out. Like there's no reason for Matt Zona to stick around. I can't think of their name. Number 12. He's the same age as Zona. I can't remember his name, and that's terrible. But there's a couple of guys.
We don't get to see him, so.
Right. Well, yeah, and they've been recruited over, right? You brought in Wesley last year, and you brought in these 2 guys this year. They're getting recruited over. So why would you stick around?
Yeah. Krista wants it. Well, I'll save this here for just a minute. But fill in the blank. Speaking of women's basketball, Notre Dame women's basketball adding 5-star guard. I just bit the lower part of my tongue. Let me start this over again. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame women's basketball adding 5-star guard Cassandre Prosper at midseason is blank.
I think it's great for the team if she can help them right away. But you're already talking about a top 5 team that she must be really stinking good if she's going to be able to help the team right now. A top 5 team. It's not like they're a bottom feeder and they just need all the help they can get. And it almost felt a little bit like that when they brought in Olivia Miles. I don't want to say they were a bottom feeder. That's exaggerating, right?
Well, but they were struggling that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were not playing well.
Right.
And the only pushback I would have is when Olivia Miles came in, it was a free year. Come on in, like get your feet wet.
Yeah.
Let's go. And you're going to be a freshman next year. I mean, this is basically free basketball. That's not the case this time around, from what I understand. I'll let you kind of take it from here. But for me, I don't know that I would want that to be my freshman year. You're coming in right in the middle of the ACC season, basically. That's tough if you're a freshman.
Yeah, it is. And to me, the biggest question is, as good as you think they might be, it's still a freshman. And you're adding that freshman to the mix. They're 9 games into the season right now, plus the practices that they had for over a month before the season started and all that stuff.
And
So
summer and all that
how
stuff.
because like even Olivia Miles, as great as she is right now, it took her some time to kind of, now that whole team was kind of out of sync, because again, it's kind of like you had parts, but the parts didn't all necessarily blend together, and you had some players transfer out, and again, I know that kind of, ruffled some fans' feathers and stuff like that. Trust me, the transfers out, in terms of like cohesion and what you're seeing right now, I think that you're probably better off with, those early transfers from after that first year. But as to Prosper, so how a player is able to mesh like that mid-season, to me, that is a big question. But you look at her, she's 6'2", she's a 6'2" guard. She, so she's longer than any of the guards they have. Like Sonia Citron is 6'1", and Miles is like 6 foot tall. So she's even taller than both of them. She can slash a little bit more. I saw a video. She can actually dunk the basketball on a regulation goal. So, like, if that tells you anything,
it tells me a lot.
So she's got some skill. She's got a skill set that they think, and again, like watching her and seeing this team, she's got a different skill set that they don't necessarily have on the team right now. How that meshes and how that gels, that's what I want to know. And then just what you said, this is different from Olivia Miles because Miles came in the middle of the COVID year. Mm-hmm. She got that, just like everyone in the nation, they let these transfers come in because their high school seasons were canceled. So they said, well, the colleges are playing. You can come in. You'll be a freshman this year. You'll still be a freshman next year. So you basically got a freshman and a half season. Mm-hmm. And so so Olivia Miles was a freshman for a year and a half. That's not going to happen with Candace Prosper. This is going to be her freshman season of eligibility. She'll burn an entire year of eligibility by playing this year. And then next year is basically her sophomore season of eligibility. So, and as Sparks pointed out, she is a 5-star, one of a handful of 5-stars in this recruiting class. She is very good. They think she's the kind of player that can really put them over the top in terms of, like, the question that Crystal, I think it was Crystal, wasn't it? Yeah. Who wins a title first, women's basketball, the football team? Based on the amount of talent that Niele Ivey is stacking right now, because Miles and Citron are both sophomores, and then now you're bringing in Cassandre Prosper, and then, these other players that they've got coming in this 2023 class as well. They're stacking talent over there, and they're going to be back in some Final Fours at the very least very soon.
Well, and I honestly, I've actually watched a lot of the women's games. Obviously, you've watched them all. But I mean, they could make a run this year. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win the national championship.
Right.
But they could make a run. I mean, they've got some really, really good pieces to this team. They've got bigs. They've got really good guards. I've liked Maddie Westbelts, and she was a freshman doing her thing. This team has talent, and they've got depth, and they've got a really good coach, and I just, if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick the women because I think that they are more stacked and ready to go right now as opposed to the football team. I mean, it would not surprise me if they made a run at it this year. It really
no, that's what I was going to say. Like, if this works out the way they think it could,
yeah,
they'll at least be in the Final Four. And once you get there, then you take your shot with whatever you get.
Absolutely.
I think the next 3 years with Miles and Citron and Prosper there, and again the players that they're bringing in afterwards and everything else they've got around them, they've got a really good shot. So it's going to be fun to watch.
It is. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Vince, what do you think about Navy's decision to part ways with Ken Niumatalolo?
I think it's one of the most ridiculous. Like, that's what I read, and I was like, what? Like, that one blew my mind. What are they thinking? What is Navy thinking? When you are in a position of leadership, okay, and you have an opportunity to replace someone on your staff, whether it's a coach, whether it's somebody on your advertising team or whatever, right? If you're going to get rid of somebody, you better have somebody better to bring in. Show me who's going to be a better fit at Navy than Ken Niumatalolo, who's been at Navy for 25 years total as an assistant and as a head coach. Show me somebody that's better. Yes, it has not gone well for them the last couple of years. I get
And
it. They're
that's
4-8.
the thing. I mean,
I get it.
3 straight losing seasons, 4 of the
here's the
last
other
5
thing.
years losing seasons.
All the good teams in this conference are leaving, and they're being replaced with garbage. So whoever takes over is going to have a better record regardless.
That's the bigger thing for them. And having I believe his name. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to say the name wrong. But the Navy guy that his first name is escaping me. I know I believe it. Again, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to say it wrong. But I talked to him a lot over the years, and I remember kind of in the early days, like when they first moved to the AAC, the American, like he thought that was a big mistake. Not like within the first couple of years, but like year 3.
Yes,
they've only had winning records in 4 of the 8 years they've been in the American, and most of those winning records were early on when they transitioned out.
Move
As they've been in a conference and teams see you year in and year out, they get more familiar with what you're doing, and it gets a little bit easier for them to play you on a yearly basis. And I think that has had a huge impact on what they've done. So I think the conference thing is the biggest. That's had the biggest impact on where Navy is. And now I know they also they were getting, and this was kind of more at the peak of when things were going on, like in Iraq and Afghanistan and those kind of things. So you had more people, sort of anxious and eager to go into the academies and serve do those kind of things. Like they were getting a higher level of skill, like the halfbacks, the slot backs, and those, the quarterbacks as well. They were getting a higher caliber of player at those positions than they're getting right now as well. And I think kind of as some of those things have worn off, they're not getting those same kind of guys, it seems like.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And so that's fallen off a little bit. And I just think the triple option is a pill to prepare for when you don't see it very often.
Yeah.
Right. And, we talked about, I remember you and I having this conversation when Navy went into the conference. We're like, they're going to see this team every single year, and it's not going to be good for Navy. They need an independent schedule where they can schedule teams, maybe a home and away, and then you don't see that team again for a few years. Like that's what they need. Now you can have a couple of every year teams. Obviously, you're going to play Army every year. You're going to play Air Force every year. You're going to play Notre Dame every year. But, Air Force and Army know what they're getting with you because they do the same thing for the most part. Okay. Everybody else, though, the rest of your schedule needs to be different teams every year if you're Navy. They just do.
Yeah.
And if they want to be successful, and I get maybe financially that they don't want to, but you're run by the government. You're going to be fine financially. Like there's no chance that Navy is going to be packing in the athletic program. Okay.
Right.
That's never going to happen.
That's right.
You should be an independent. You don't need to be in a conference. You should be an independent, and that will help your football program.
Yep. I completely agree. I think that's the biggest mistake that they made. Let's just nominate Keith Kinder to take that job.
They could do a lot worse. I mean,
I absolutely agree.
They could do a lot worse. I mean, I felt like Ken is a good person. He felt like I don't know him personally, but it just felt like he was a good fit at Navy. And are you going to be able to go out and find somebody better? I just don't know that you will.
I agree. And especially I saw in one of the articles, there's no necessarily guarantee that you're going to continue to run the triple option going forward. I would think that you would at that kind of, again, because it's a nullifier. It's an equalizer. Yeah, exactly. Because you're not getting the same caliber. If you're going to play at the Division I level, you're not getting the kind of players that Ohio State and Notre Dame are getting.
If you just try to line up and go toe-to-toe with some of the teams that are going to be on your schedule, you're going to lose those games. I mean, that's just not possible. And the offensive linemen that Navy's going to bring in are not going to be 6'7", 6'8", 310, 320. Like, that's just not who's going to fit in a sub. Like
Yeah.
that's not, that's just not how it's going
I
to
mean,
work.
if you put them even in the MAC and they were running just a traditional offense,
They're going to get smoked.
yeah,
It's just you have to have, and that's why they run triple option in the first place,
right.
because it's an equalizer.
Yep. Okay, last question, Vince. Did you see the video this past weekend from the high school? It was a state championship high school football game. The running back is tackled at like the 1 yard line, but they call it a touchdown on the field, and it stood. And the team that scored this supposed touchdown ends up winning the state championship as a result. So, my question to you is what this says about the state of officiating right now.
Okay, first of all, once again, your questions cause me to look things up and to be surprised about various things.
So you
right?
hadn't seen this yet?
Nope. Had not seen it, but I looked it up when I saw the question. So I'm doing my research these days.
Okay,
Mr.
that's good.
Stiers.
That's good.
Oh my goodness.
It's not even close.
I found one.
It's an embarrassment.
I found a view down the line that was behind the line judge. Okay. I can't remember where I found it at, but it was, I think it was on TikTok actually, but it was behind the line. So you could see what he was seeing. Okay. Not even close, like a full yard short. And he runs in to get a better view and then throws his hands in the air that it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
That is a guy that made
the ground.
He made it to the state championship as a referee.
See, that's what I want to know. How does an official like that? Because once you get into the playoffs, it's supposed to be the better officials who are getting these bigger games every week, right? Like you get rated.
Yes.
The better officials get the games. How does this guy work a state championship game? It's awful.
Woof, dude. Like, woof. And I realize there's a shortage out there, but if you can't find 5 officials to do your state championship game that are actually good, I'm sorry. That's on the Georgia High School Athletic Association or whatever they call themselves down there. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible call. And where's the other 4 officials? They're like, dude,
I know.
You're wrong.
No one is going to overrule this guy. I mean,
everybody in the stadium knew that was not a touchdown because nobody, there was a couple of linemen that were like, yeah, it's in. But like the fans didn't think it was in. Nobody thought that was a touchdown.
Well, there was one, and I forgot that you didn't do games with me this year because I was thinking of this, and it's like, oh yeah, Vince and I saw this, and it's like, no, Vince wasn't with me. But I think I sent you this video. We were down at Warsaw, and this Warsaw kid takes a handoff, and he gains maybe a yard or two, but he falls like flat on his face. I don't even think he was really
the replay though.
Tackled. Yeah. So he's like his stomach, his whole, like knees, everything is, all of his appendages are down on the field. He falls flat down, and there's an official standing maybe 5 or 10 yards away to the side. And this kid just gets up from about the 20, 25 yard line and runs to the end zone, and they call it a touchdown. But half the Mishawaka team had stopped because it was obvious. It's a high school game. He doesn't even have to be touched. He's down. He falls flat. The official's standing right there looking at it. He gets up, runs to the end zone, touchdown. And it's like, this is what you see. And we have seen this, unfortunately, for a long time in these high school games. It's like, I don't know, Vince. And, and I realize like within the last 5 or 6 years, there have been a lot of like the better NFL officials who have retired. And then when you get that means that you're bumped, like guys are moving on from college to the pro ranks, which means that some the better high school guys are moving up. Like I remember back when I was doing Notre Dame baseball games, there is a guy in the area who was he was like probably the best, if not, at least one of the best, if not the best high school umpire in the area. But when he bumped up and he was doing college games, there was a very distinct difference in the quality of his work compared to the guys he was working with.
I think I know who you're talking about. And I agree with you. He would do midweek games, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't conference games that he was doing, but it was midweek games.
Right.
And I agree. And there is a big difference when you step up, and there's supposed to be. I mean, the playing is faster, it's better. The officials have to be faster and better. They just do, and there is a lack of officials, and I get that. But when you're at the highest level, which the state championship game in your state should be the highest level, you need to do a better job of that. And I honestly, I blame the other 4 officials just as much as I blame the guy who called it a touchdown, because it is your job as a officiating crew to get that right. And I don't care where you were stationed as an official, whether you're a line judge, a back judge, the white hat, whatever. That kid was short by a lot.
You got to get it right.
You have to get that right. You have to.
See, most important game most of those kids are ever going to play in their life, and you just screwed it up on just a horrible call, just because you can't do your job. Like those officials, and this is what irks me, because like people would say, well, they're high school officials or they're, whatever. Other than the coaches, they're the only guys out there getting paid. Players aren't getting paid to play in those games.
Not high school.
So high school officials are getting paid. And I assume once they get into the playoffs, they're making a little bit more for a game than they're making for just a regular game during the season. And if they're not, but still they're getting paid.
Right.
And that's my ultimate point. You're getting paid, do your job right. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
And no, it was not Bill Sharp. I saw the question in there. The guy I was just talking about, it was not Bill Sharp. All right, Vincenzo. Well, that's going to do it for tonight.
Woo!
You got a lot of Christmas duties the rest of the week, huh?
I do. I have to decorate the house at some point outside. We're gonna probably do that tomorrow, and then I have.
That's right. You do the outside lights, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So we got to do that, and then Wednesday I will not be in attendance on Wednesday because I was asked to do the PA for senior night for the wrestling team, and I begrudgingly said yes, that I would do that.
It's already senior night for wrestling?
Apparently it is.
December?
COVID screwed everything up when it comes to senior nights. Now coaches just pick things willy-nilly as to when they're going to have senior night.
So they'll do it like in December, even though you got 6 more meets left in the season. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So gotta do that. I'm gonna do that for them, and yeah. So like I said, begrudgingly.
Well, good luck with all that. Don't shock yourself. Don't fall off the roof, Clark Griswold, as you're being called in the chat right now.
That would be bad. That would be very bad.
All right. Hit the like button if you would on your way out. Subscribe, rate, and review, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, baby.
As well. Good one tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
See you.